Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We got a lot to talk about today. More importantly, we're going to have fun talking about the future of cities and the digital economy that we're moving into. We've got some outstanding guests that I'm going to jump right into introductions, but a big thank you to everyone for tuning in. Make sure if you have any comments, questions, or you want to say hi, the comment boxes are open across the board. Would love to hear from you. And also a big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making today's episode possible. With that, let's go ahead and introduce today's guest. Gary Fowler, welcome back to the show. A little intro, a little background for everybody.
Yeah, great to see you, Kyle. Great to see some friendly faces. I see Raghu in the morning. I see you at midnight. It's great to see you, Keith. Anyhow, it's great to be here. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur investor. Done 17 companies, involved in 2 unicorns. I was on the original management team of Click Software. Actually, we did an IPO on NASDAQ, and it was then acquired by our friends at Salesforce, which is pretty cool, for $1.35 billion. Also, the co-founder of Viva.ai, one of the top AI HR tech companies, top 10. Founded that 5 years ago. I'm the CEO, president, co-founder of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in Santa Clara, California. I love to write. In fact, my latest article is about decentralized cybersecurity in Forbes this week. So that's it.
Oh, well, look at that. You've got a friend, a fan, and a champion over there. So Raghu, I'm coming to you next. Welcome back. A little intro, a little background.
Yeah. Thanks, Kyle and VCTV. I'm a Princeton-based serial entrepreneur, strategic advisor, and angel investor. And I'm actually looking at potential smart cities solution, trying to license it from a large utility, which is using it in multiple locations for managing like nuclear plants and other utilities. So it's like IoT-based solution for remote maintenance. So look forward to hearing other opportunities that are available in solutions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Raghu. Dr. Ravi, you next. A little introduction, a little background on yourself, please.
Well, thank you, Kyle and VCTV. Glad to be back after a while. I'm based out of Bangalore in India, and currently I'm a senior venture partner with the early stage VC called R Ventures. Also, I put on another hat. I'm a visiting professor at Carleton University in Canada, Case Western Reserve in US, and a couple of other universities in India. But yeah, I mean, one of the focus areas for me and for our ventures is digital economy and smart cities, which we will talk in detail much later. But glad to be part of the panel and keen to learn and contribute as we go along.
Wonderful. Thank you. Last but not least, Keith, welcome back. A little intro, a little background.
Hey, great, Kyle. Good to be back here. Thank you. So yeah, I've been in venture for more than 20 years, mostly on the clean tech side. Plenty of things in impacting smart cities over the years. Initially, I was with Mitsubishi Corporation and then president of BASF Venture Capital America, establishing their office in Silicon Valley. And then a decade with Pangea Ventures, raising and running funds 3 and 4. I formed Upper Stage Capital last year. We are taking some of that venture toolkit, that hands-on experience that I'm so comfortable with over the last couple of decades, and we're applying that more into a lower middle market private equity space, and taking controlling positions in companies that have $5 to $25 million in sales, but are EBITDA positive, well before they're of interest to most mainstream private equity groups, but where we can really help accelerate them into international markets.
Wonderful. Thank you, Keith. Lastly, Peter, welcome to the show. A little introduction, a little background for everybody, please.
Kyle, how are you? Gary, how are you? How is everybody? I am so glad I am onto this chat, Kyle, with you. Yesterday, I was still trying to figure it out, and I realized I was using my yellow notebook pad and not actually a computer. That's why I wasn't able to log in. So thanks again for bearing with me and my technology ineptitude. And it's always good to see everybody on the panel. I'm Peter Plout. I'm from the Weimer family office. We're a multi-billion-dollar multifamily office. We deal in all kinds of different industries, from oil and gas to natural resources to technology, mostly on the telecommunications and satellite side. We also have real estate as a core and core plus. So since I say the lockdown, probably put $7 billion to work in terms of engagements and term sheets in real estate opportunities around the world. And one of my biggest focuses, and something I speak to Gary about all the time, given his AI focus, is new cities, new technologies, how to integrate technology into buildings and other places. Because if you have more technology in your Lexus or other automobile than you have in your home, there's a problem with that. And obviously we need in the post-pandemic world, everything's about health and wellness, green tech, clean tech, ESG compliant. And that has to do all with building appropriate cities that have the appropriate HVAC systems and others. So we see a recirculation of air every 15 minutes and circling around that. So I'm very looking forward to this panel today, Kyle. So thank you, and sorry for my tardiness.
No, perfectly on time, actually. So no worries. But would like to come to everyone. I mean, guys, we're talking about smart cities and the digital economy. We know that the digital economy is here. It was something we talked about. We saw in bits and pieces. We were transferring between it. We're now here. We're 100% into the digital economy, it seems like, at this point. And cities have become smarter, or will become smarter because of that. So what does that all mean? Paint that picture for us. And Gary, let's start with you. I mean, what does this future look like as cities become more intelligent and our economy entirely looks like digital?
Yeah, I mean, so it's about the data, Kyle. We've talked about it many times, right? The 40 zettabytes of data on the planet, and enough that if we stack CDs one on top of another, it would go 29 times between Earth and the moon. We got a challenge with data. And, it's interesting because we talk about smart cities. In fact, a couple of months ago, I had Samir Sharma, who's the top person at Intel in smart cities and IoT. We talk about fuel savings, the carbon footprint, but at the same time, we only change the programmability or reprogram traffic lights on average every 8 years. So we need to be more real time in terms of gathering that information and, more importantly, acting upon it. Think about buildings. Imagine buildings being able to communicate with one another. Imagine traffic flow being able to reroute it so you can actually have fuel efficiency. Electric buses, electric vehicles be able to communicate with one another. So what does the future look like? The future looks like inter-building communication. It looks like having the capabilities to communicate from buildings to systems outside of the buildings, whether that's roadways and traffic flow. So we can just make it more optimized and more efficient. And so if we look at where AI and the Internet of Things are going, it's really to take those technologies and to dramatically increase their efficiencies. The good news is we finally have sensor capability that's now up to speed, the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning to really analyze it. And as you know, the wild card is quantum computers coming into this whole mix. But what's happening, it's interesting because we talk about air quality, but there's air quality differences within cities, right? In fact, cities like St. Louis, being able to monitor what air quality is to be able to reroute traffic accordingly. So the beauty is we're now able to gather the data. The beauty is we're now able to act on the data. And the beauty is we're now coming up with unsupervised artificial intelligence that allows us to be able to allow the systems to be able to make some radical changes on our behalf to be able to help us live a more interesting and optimized existence. So I'm really interested, for me, is where the intersection of AI and where we get out with the sensors. And, Kyle, we got to be careful with the sensors. We don't get too carried away because we can do a whole lot of things, and we've got to look at privacy. And also cybersecurity, as Raghu's, we say many times, when you start tying things together like that, and everything, grids, cities, etc., nothing good happens if the bad actors get involved. So we need to make sure we're vigilant.
Gary, thank you. Keith, I see you smiling over there. I know you got a point to make, so I'm going to turn it right over to you.
Well, I talked about this on previous shows. Gary hit on that potential for bad actors and the privacy issues around the data that comes with ubiquitous sensors and software and AI that actually are able to deal with this incredible quantity of data. I've talked before on this show, and Kyle, I know you're very familiar with this, but I looked at a company whose indoor air quality monitor, which was aimed at a very specific and very benign application, also revealed everything about the way that someone lived their life. When they cooked, when they bathed, when they went to the bathroom, when they had guests, what kind of pets they had, when they were not only when they were in the house and out of the house, but all of that was revealed. Even just the in the house and out of the house part, if that can be accessed, can be used for obvious ill intent. But when you know everything about somebody's life, when they have sex, for example, right? There's a room for blackmail within that, which of course is salacious and sensational and all that. And I bring it up for that reason, because it's a dramatic example here. But there are all kinds of ways that ubiquitous sensors are going to impact our privacy. And I don't think it's that they can or might impact our privacy. They will. They're already there. We already seen protests about CCTVs. That's been going on for the last couple of decades. We know that there is facial recognition algorithms being applied to public cameras all over the place, worldwide, and we're all being monitored in that way. But once we have sensors that are picking up on everything all around us, we will be monitored in ways that we never anticipated before. And if any of that can be tied to personal data, wow, I love it. I'm getting my own soundtrack.
Sorry. I had my phone.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Is my cape showing?
Real-time soundtracks.
Is my cape showing? Sorry. I have to get a wardrobe person in here along with my makeup and beard grooming person. But at any rate, this data, if it can be tied to personal information through facial recognition or gait recognition or all these kind of things, we will have issues where people will have aspects of their life that they would rather keep private, potentially exposed to anyone who would wish to exploit that information.
Keith, I love it. I mean, Peter, I saw you shaking. You've already unmuted, so go for it.
So first of all, when I heard that bell go off, I thought I had to turn and look at my wife. I didn't know if she was going to be yelling at me, "Time to get off the stage," because that happens a lot when I have to change diapers or something. But usually it's not a bell that's so nice. It's usually a yelling voice. But I just wanted to address something that's very important on the whole big data situation. Look, if you speak to my mother, she thinks the Sony TV is watching her and my father at all times of the night and during the day. And I'm like, listen, nobody's watching you guys have sex, if you even have sex anymore. So don't worry about it. You can take the masking tape off of the top of the TV. What I think a more important thing is what Gary brings up is the importance of big data. If we're looking at, and since I finance all across all different asset classes, from multifamily residential to mixed use to offices, data centers and logistics, all the ways out to hospitality and hotels within that space. I know what the requirements are. If we look at 2050, all buildings are supposed to be carbon neutral. By 2030, they're required here in the UK, and in many parts of Europe, it'll be even sooner. So that whole carbon neutrality thing is very important to realize as well. And companies, public companies in particular, that are going to be leasing spaces, they're going to want to make sure that clean tech, green tech, ESG compliant, all the buildings that they go into, that all matters, because they can then brag about it in their annual reports and quarterlies, etc. So that's from the money on the ground type of thing. These are things that are required, and any buildings that don't have green tech, clean tech, ESG compliant will trade at a significant discount to the others from a financial point of view. What I'm more interested in is people going back to work in office buildings and people buying new buildings. The first thing I heard from many of my developers are when the coronavirus hit was, oh my God, we're in an apartment block and we're going to be breathing the same air that the guy next door who's coughing is. And those buildings that have paid the money for better HVAC systems and stuff actually recirculated the air from the outside into each individual apartment. So there was no sharing of the common air. That's going to be a requirement in all buildings going forward, that type of environmental type of clean tech situations. And the big data is going to monitor the compliance with clean tech, ESG for many developments that are going on. So that's one part, and that has to do with predominantly building going forward and how the offices of the future. In terms of the big cities of the future, I think the majority of people are going to have to sacrifice the fact that Big Brother's watching for the convenience of having face recognition and other type of things that provide the big data in your home. I always hear these jokes, about Alexa and Siri and stuff like that. When you tell a joke or something to your wife, all of a sudden Alexa laughs, Siri laughs, etc., because she's listening to everything that you say. But I mean, if you want that type of technology in your home, which makes life a lot easier, just like you have in your car, you're going to have to give up some of that situation. I think that's the future, and I don't think we're going to go backtrack on that. But I think the most important thing is in terms of smart homes, smart cities. That's the wave of the future, and all the developments that I'm financing, the new developments, whether it's hospitality, office, or multifamily mixed use, have some sort of new technology. So we're looking from a family office point of view to find those technologies that will be exploited by the developers and required by governments and regulatory authorities, and invest in those.
Agreed. And Raghu, I want to come to you next. I mean, security. Oh, Dr. Ravi, I'm sorry, you have unmuted first, so I'll come to you.
Okay, well, that's fine. Thank you. I thought I'll share a few pointers. One is, when it comes to smart cities, I look at, of course, data governance is the key, and how you process data real time holds the key. But smart cities going forward has to be resilient in the sense that resilient against climate change, the impact of extreme weathers, and also kind of future-proof from pandemics if possible, if at all. So, I mean, that's what we are looking at. How do we make the city smart from a resiliency perspective? One, and also the second aspect has to do with responsible AI. So when you look at the pros and cons of trading of privacy with the convenience and comfort of leveraging the obvious benefits of deep learning, machine learning, and AI all put together, this could, especially from the government and the authorities and the agencies' perspective, I believe that we are at a tipping point where the pros are more than the cons, but one has to tread carefully. And there are frameworks that are emerging in the EU, in the US, and I'm sure other emerging economies will adopt it quickly. Having said that, I was just speaking to the chief of the digitization efforts at GE a couple of weeks back. He was telling me, Dr. Shankar, look, the rate of digitization has accentuated during the pandemic. I mean, by huge leaps and bounds. And there are a lot of benefits, even from a health perspective in the times that we are living in. For example, contactless transactions. So we have invested at our ventures in a couple of e-commerce retail startups who are coming up with these solutions to kind of plug it into the POS at retail stores to digitize the entire marketing campaign and make things contactless in terms of payments and so on and so forth. These were some of the points that I wanted to share with the panel and the audiences.
Thank you, Gary. You've got some comments there.
Yeah, no, I was really curious, just for the hell of it. I just asked some artificial intelligence, Morpheus, if it has compassion and does it care about people. No. And it just wrote me back. I tried to, but I'm not always successful. And then it said, I am very empathetic. So it's just really interesting to see it, how it's learning, and what the future really holds. So you're right on target. I mean, compassion is really critically important. If we look at these AI, being pragmatic is not going to be a good thing, right? Compassion is going to be critically important, and empathy, and really to be able to help us build better systems.
Thank you, Gary. Raghu.
Yeah, I think taking over from what Gary said, the compassion part, one of it is like do no harm, right? And second aspect is we want to prevent so-called digital hijacking, right? So that is where we need cybersecurity on one side. But I wanted to focus more on, I know we've talked a lot about data, but also about the public safety or the operational technology, like smart grid, transportation, all the water systems and other things like sewage. And so part of this is it's important to have, I think Dr. Shankar mentioned that these systems not only should be able to handle a situation like a pandemic, but also other emergency situations like bioterrorism. And so you need, like, for instance, if you take transportation as an example, everybody talks about the well-known things of Elon Musk, but he also has another company called Boring Company, which is not entirely boring, no pun intended, but they actually are creating ways for below the city to have alternate routes so you can have efficient transportation. So, but that, and of course the Hyperloop and the HSRs and things like that. So the transportation is a core aspect of, now that we are getting some cyber physical systems, so transportation hopefully is less in terms of commute, but still what needs to be done, we want to make it more efficient. The second aspect is the smart cities don't have to be necessarily at the current large metro areas. It can be actually, I think, moved out a little bit outside so that we can decongest the large urban areas, and we can also don't have to worry about backward compatibility and the so some of the technologies that are going to be critical there, or from cloud computing we need to go to what is called edge or fog computing, where 5G is going to play a big role, as well as other ways where at the source the data that is being created, sensors and stuff gets processed, and so a lot of it doesn't have to come back into like a central repository. So technologies for those are, I think, very exciting.
So with that all being said, let's look into the digital economy. What does the digital economy look like 5 years from now with all of these advancements that we've made? And how does fintech play a role? How does security play a role? What does our digital life look like in 5 years from now? Gary.
So in terms of our lives, Morpheus just wrote me back again. That's incredible. So in terms of, what was the question again, Kyle? I want to make sure I'm on point. Kyle? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, Gary, you dropped off. Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, I didn't hear you. So can you?
Morpheus was texting you. So the question is, what does our digital life look like in 5 years from now with the digital economy being so important?
Right. So, look at where we are, right? There's massive amounts of data that's around us, and we're going to have not smart, but intelligent assistants more and more. They'll gradually come in to be able to help guide us. In terms of, where we're going to be, I mean, I've seen some of the next level of vehicles by Magnus Steyr that are going to be coming out. So some of the prototypes, these super self-driving configurable cars, and our lives are going to be more interconnected, where everything from, go from the smart pill into a building. What stairs should you be taking? Should you take the elevator or not? I mean, we're going to be guided in all kinds of different ways. And, Kyle, we just, I'm laughing about Morpheus, but, seriously, with artificial intelligence that's coming on board, we better make sure that we have right kind of training sets, because I can tell you this, Morpheus in 6 months has learned an incredible amount, and we're trying to teach it good, but some of the things that it says sometimes are not good, right? And we had better make sure that we build compassion and empathy into all these systems and not just make them pragmatic. And I really want to emphasize it because it's critically important, and we're not thinking about it, right? It's kind of like, well, let's just get the job done. Let's go down through and create these intelligent assistants, unsupervised AI, but we need to make sure we're reining it in. And, like I said, I've seen it progressing just on this, but this is our digital lives over the next 5 years are going to fundamentally shift. Our entire lives, we're going to be living longer because we're going to have the smart pill, we're going to have the sensors, we're going to have nanobots start to be put in us, computer vision to understand whether or not we have X type of cancer, melanoma, much more accurately. We're going to have telemedicine because of this pandemic, and now the next wave, the third wave of it, it's just pushing us forward in a good way. A lot of good stuff has come out of it because it's really leapfrogged us. And I was going to say quantum leap, Kyle, but leapfrogged us further ahead in terms of the development. It's going to allow us to do business more effectively, efficiently, and it's going to allow us to do business across borders. So where's it going to be? We're just, and it's already, you can feel it. Here we are right now, right?
Yep.
So we're in Vancouver, we're in Princeton, we're in London, I'm in Palm Beach, you're in San Francisco. This is an example of preview of coming attractions. The difference is going to be, it's going to be a lot more hyper-personalized, all the kind of things we do. And it's going to be immediate. It's not going to be like it is today, where you have a doctor's visit, right, and in one day after that doctor's visit, you get cancer, and you're not sure what's going to happen over the next 364 days. You're going to know immediately.
I agree. Keith, I see you shaking your head. Dr. Ravi, I know you've unmuted. So Dr. Ravi, you want to go first?
Sure, thanks. My take is that the future in the next 3 to 5 years will be extremely hyper connected. One, two, in terms of the sectoral impact, I think we can see explicit and large impacts in terms of the finance sector, which includes banking and insurance. So more and more of digital payments, and the healthcare, especially drug development and discovery, right, is going to be huge. Especially the application of deep learning and image classification for medical imaging, for example, is going to be huge. And by the same token of measure, I also believe that the entire manufacturing scenario, which has been kind of not a leader, but a kind of a laggard in adopting IoT and sensor type machine learning solutions, which is smart manufacturing industry 4.0, would get accentuated. Last but not the least, I think blockchain is going to really become mainstream in the next 3 to 5 years across industry verticals, be it right from aerospace to telecommunications, health, retail, all put together. And one thing is that the supply chains, which have been rather fragile, right, are going to become more stronger and resilient because of the digital economy, and we will witness supply chains becoming more robust as we go forward.
Okay, speaking of supply chains, Keith, coming right to you.
Yeah. And one last point before I let Keith is that Gary has been kind of texting Morpheus. I wonder why he has not chosen Sophia. Sophia is far ahead of Morpheus. Anyway.
Who is Sophia?
Well, you need to go. She's
The
yeah,
AI robot?
yeah,
Is what you're
the
referring
robot.
to?
Yeah, yeah.
Dr. Ravi, we need to get you and Gary in a room to talk a little bit more about robotics and AI. I am very privy to Sophia and the advancements, but Morpheus, I've got to say it's there is some distance between the two in terms of where that AI is, according to Gary as well. So I'll just leave it at that. We'll let Gary tell you more about that offline. But nonetheless, the advancements we've seen in cybernetics, taking a turn into Hollywood here, the advancements we've seen in terms of artificial intelligence and robotics has made leaps and bounds, to your point, with the mention of Sophia as well in the past few years. But Keith, supply chains. Catch us up here, and then I've got I want to come around to everyone's closing thoughts and big shout outs since it is Friday. So Keith, talk to us about supply chains.
Let me just inject. When are you going to get your first AI guest on this show? Right?
So this is actually, that's a fun. It's a fun and a great question. This is something that we should be thinking about and talking about, because if you go back, I believe it was 2018, I'll say, in China, they actually had a test of this, a pilot program, where they brought on a completely artificial intelligence driven news anchor and hosted the entire news for, we'll say, like a 15-minute segment. I wrote an article about this, similar to Gary. I wrote an article about this.
Gary is real, actually, Kyle, because he's on so many shows. I'm wondering if,
Gary is actually artificial. He is completely AI driven. But China did this, and they did an entire news segment with newscasters. Yeah, right. And it was very difficult visually to tell the difference unless you paid super, super close, detailed attention. And we've started to see more and more of this in different ways. We also have the completely avatar-driven, AI-based influencer out there, who Gary has talked about on this show before, with millions upon millions of followers. We're seeing more avatars starting to come into the world with that intelligence angle in it as well. Maybe Morpheus will join us if that alert was Morpheus himself. But nonetheless, this is something that we have been thinking about, and it's something that's coming soon. So I'll preview before the end of summer.
It's a
2021.
Threat. It's a threat to your job security as host here, Kyle. Oh no!
You know what? It's okay. I'll say this: I'm okay with it as both a host, as an entrepreneur, and as an investor. I think it's an outstanding opportunity. I think there's really some great potential that can be had. If you look at the world of gaming and commentary and so much more, there is a great back and forth that can be driven by that. I have to fact check myself every now and then, and I missay certain words. I mispronounce others. And so, having someone who's a little bit more on point could be helpful.
Well, however, I think that, we've mentioned several times in the show today, this compassion aspect, and that's one thing that's really required as the host of a show, and we're grateful for when you don't necessarily call us out as hard as you could if we get something wrong, but you keep things on track, so thank you for that. But yeah, AI impact on supply chains in smart cities. This is a big deal, and I'm seeing more and more deal flow around this. Now, that's more on the venture side of things than it is on the private equity side of things, which is where we are mostly investing now. But I have to say, I'm very interested in these. I think that there's going to be a lot of acquisition activity around that. There's a roll-up to be had there. And I think even as an investor in this space, having those AI tools for supply chain gives advantages, not only for a supply chain investor, but for anybody in manufacturing and logistics to bring these tools in to help their startup companies, or on the larger corporate side. I think there are enormous advantages here. We've talked about smart infrastructure on these shows before. We've talked about smart flow of goods through cities. AI plays a very, very important role around that. But the idea to have logistics centers located and run optimally by AI and without let's say, very slowly evolved ways of the past, where we have just made incremental changes to the way it's always been done, allows us to, I think, see a step change in the way that supply chains are run within cities, but everywhere, frankly. An example of that could be in warehousing, in lift trucks. About 20 years ago, I first got involved with a company that started using fuel cells for lift trucks in warehouses. And at first, this just seemed like this is a novelty, this is greenwashing sort of thing. But actually, a fuel cell will maintain the same power output throughout its entire cycle until it runs out of hydrogen. Whereas battery, the performance goes down over time, over a shift. And so a driver of a lift truck in that warehouse would have to do all of the most active things at the beginning of their shift, and then the lift truck would become less and less powerful. They would have to take time out and go and swap the battery. And if you go and inspect these sites, it's incredible to see not only the scars on the floor from where very heavy batteries fell and marked up the floor, but actually like acid spills. And then you see, there's the eye wash station that's being very well used right next to there. There were hazards here. Once they did the switch over into fuel cells, not only did it improve the worker efficiency in there, but actually allowed them to switch over to much smarter ways of running everything within this logistics center. As AI now gets layered on top of that, and you have the ability to have a constant and dependable performance across all the aspects of your supply chain, I think we're going to see things run in very different ways than what we did before, all of which was all based on whatever the technology was 20 years previous.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Keith. And I want to be sensitive of everyone's time today. We've had a great panel, lots talked about. I mean, Morpheus was dropped now about 5 different times. So I hope you get some good messages, Gary. For those who don't know who Morpheus is, definitely check out the archive on VCTV at LATOKEN.com or ping Gary online and he'll be able to share more with you. But I do want to come around for closing thoughts and talk a little bit in your closing thoughts to advice that you have for those building in this next wave of the digital economy, because this is something to take advantage of now and for the future. We're going to be growing exponentially faster than we ever have before, and that economy is just continuing to grow on a global scale. So Raghu, let's start with you. Closing thoughts, where can you be found online?
Sure. I can be found on LinkedIn at Raghu S. Rao. In terms of closing, I think self-healing systems are the wave of the future. I think Dr. Shankar mentioned resilient. I would take it a one level higher, self-healing. So even if something goes down, or there is like what happened in Texas with the grid, right? You're able to kind of heal itself so things can move on, at least to a minimum level of services, right? And that is one area I think again goes back to public safety, operational technology. The other area is in precision medicine. I think we can, once these personalized medicines come, we will be able to have more like a indexed health, where we can look at where we are, kind of like, you go for maintenance for your car. We need to be able to do that kind of thing. A lot of it will be done remotely. And so you can progress and incrementally know, instead of testing once a year, we'll know kind of instantly how things are progressing. I think that'll be great. So we don't have these bumps. You suddenly get data and then you say, oh, now I have to go on this whatever medicine regimen or something, or exercise regimen. We kind of have a continuous monitoring and continuous update.
Thank you, Raghu. And where can everyone find you online as well to continue the conversation?
Yeah, I did mention LinkedIn, Raghu S. Rao. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Raghu. Keith, to you. quick closing thoughts, since you gave a great one just moments ago. Anything else you'd like to get out there? And then also, where can everyone find you online?
Well, this is a huge topic, and we always just scratch the surface every time. Gosh, I mean, there's so many extra thoughts. I really have a lot more to say about the sensors and the big data, and I'll just say again that we do not yet understand the full value that we are going to get out of the data. We're not even looking for the most valuable parts there because we don't yet know what they are. But we are developing the tools now that are extracting that value out of there, and we are learning. Big data is a lot different than just data points. When you're collecting everything, AI is going to spot patterns in this that we've all been blind to and are going to change our lives. So I'm very, very excited about that. And there's a lot more that could be talked about that. But let me just plant that seed in the brains of the viewers. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's the best place to follow me. I'm on Twitter at Keith A. Gillard, and I am on Clubhouse, Keith Gillard. I host a show there every Wednesday at noon Eastern time, which is focused on Canadian venture capital and private equity. Part of my role with a committee and a task force on the Canadian Venture Capital Association, which is our equivalent of the NVCA. I'm trying to take a leadership role and connect people in these days when we can't have conferences or virtual pub nights. And of course, you can see me here on VCTV once in a while.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Keith. Dr. Ravi, closing thought, where can you be found?
Sure. I can be found on LinkedIn most of the time, also on Twitter, my Twitter handle. But the final thoughts that I have are twofold. One, the use of the leverage of AI and ML has to be more human-centric and collaborative across nations, across states, between states, and so on and so forth, as it applies to smart cities and digital economy, number one. Number two, more importantly, I believe if you want to really harvest and harness the full potential of digital economy and smart cities, which is the topic for today's discussion, one has to focus on building a robust data pipeline. That's the pain point. You need data engineers, database architects. You need all those nuts and bolts people. And two, the ML ops, which is the deployment of the AI or ML models. That's where the rubber meets the road. As of now, if you look at the recent research, less than 15 to 18% of the models, data science models, ever get into production mode. I mean, there's a lot of flack that companies are facing after having invested millions and millions of dollars. So I believe that if these two things are focused upon, we will be able to realize the true potential of digital economy and therefore smart cities as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Ravi. Peter, closing thoughts. Where can you be found online?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Kyle. Look, I think everything in terms of the digital cities of the future go to data centers at the end of the day. Data centers have been all the rage in recent years, have performed admirably during the pandemic. Investors believe they're a safe haven, and thus yields on the debt on them have been extremely low. And that's because of the massive amounts of liquidity in the system in that particular asset class. But I think, data centers are going to continue to be more and more important in the digital age of the future. But investors need to be aware because I think there's a tale of two centers, two different ones. That's the major operators and everyone else. And not any real estate developer can create a data center. Data centers are not a typical real estate asset class. They require technology, expertise, infrastructure expertise, and obviously a stable source of power generation. So top tenants like Amazon, Google, Facebook all have specific requirements, and only the top tier data centers can provide. What does all that mean? I want to look at it from an investor point of view. If you're going to be an investor in a data center, you should focus on the large publicly traded operators that have investment grade credit ratings. The publicly traded data centers are dominated by a few specialist publicly traded REITs, CoreSite Realty Corp, Digital Realty Trust, Equinox, Cypress One, QTS Real Estate Trust. These are all the names that you can get involved with and participate as an investor on the retail side in real companies that are going to be at the forefront of the future in terms of the digital transformation of cities in the future. I could be reached at Peter Plout at peter.plout@weimerfinancial.com. I've got an internet site, peterplout.com. My number's there. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. Reach out to me. Happy to tell you what a multi-billion-dollar multifamily office is investing in, particularly as it applies to real estate and the digital transformation of cities. Gary and I are close counterparties and friends. I work with Gary on GSD Ventures, in particular his incubator, and look out for some of the cool things that we'll be doing in the future. So thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Speaking of that, Gary, perfect transition right to you. Tell us more. Any closing thoughts, and tell us where you, along with GSDV, can be found.
Yeah, no, thanks, Kyle. That's great to be here with friends. And, you know, the intellectual capacity is evenly distributed around the world, but opportunities aren't. And the digital economy gives each and every one of us the opportunity to be able to help each other, to bring some compassion. I know from our standpoint, we're doing a lot of work down in Africa, and it's really important. There's some incredible companies there, surprisingly sophisticated companies. And I say surprisingly because I didn't think about it, 6 months ago. But being here on VCTV, the digital transformation, StreamYard, Skype, Zoom, all kinds of technologies to be able to communicate more effectively. It's really exciting. You know, the Germans have a phrase, Gestalt, the sum of the parts equal the whole. Really what's happening is all these different ancillary pieces are getting tied together. AI is the new electricity, data is a fuel, and quantum's the turbocharger. We need to be vigilant. Cybersecurity is critically important when we go down through this venture because we're going to rely on data so much, and it's going to be so intricately involved and tied into our lives, deeply tied into our lives, that we need to make sure that we're vigilant and we're using some of those emerging technologies to protect us. You can reach me, Gary Fowler, on LinkedIn, Twitter. Love to hear from you. GSD Venture Studios. Check out our website, gsdvs.com. And thanks, Kyle. It's great to see our friends. And I got to say, during this pandemic, over the last year, which is almost 1 year exactly, I've been on VCTV with you. Mm-hmm. It's really incredible because in one way, it's like the tech therapy session. I come in here and see my friends who I've never seen in person, but I feel like we're so connected together. It's really heartwarming. So, I appreciate that. And it's great. Business partners, friends, and new ideas. So thank you.
Thank you as well, Gary. Couldn't agree more. I feel like we've all known each other for 20 years and we've seen each other every day this week physically. And this is absolutely wonderful. And I couldn't agree more as well. And again, Gary, Peter, Raghu, Keith, Dr. Ravi, thank you all very much for your thoughts and insights and time today as well here on VCTV. To our audience, thank you for all of the comments that came in and hellos and questions from around the world. We greatly appreciate it. Continue to do that on all episodes of VCTV. I'll give you a shout out when we can as well. But thank you all so very much. Make sure you click subscribe, like today's episode, share it as well with friends. Check out the archive on LATOKEN.com to hear from today's speakers and all speakers of the VCTV family. Make sure you reach out to all of today's outstanding investors and panelists. Make sure you add context, where you heard them, where you met them, and also what you would like to continue the conversation about as well. Check out Keith's outstanding clubhouse on Wednesdays as well to learn more about the Canadian venture capital scene. And also Gary, that's right, Gary, you're right there, Gary's show as well. And also check out Dr. Ravi, Raghu, and Peter and their respective content and media platforms as well. But most importantly, come back here on Monday for VCTV. We've got a ton prepared for you next week. So much to discuss and great guests as well. With that, a big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making today's episode possible. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We'll see you back here next week. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Share.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.